Welcome back to Patriot Power Free Bonus Products, where your favorite hosts talk about essential information you can use right now, and the best products and the best discounts available online and elsewhere, for patriots following the American way. And don't forget to visit the description for your free bonus products. While you are down there, we'd appreciate it if you could like and subscribe.
Welcome back, deep divers. Today, we are diving deep, really deep, into something that's, well, it's kind of essential if you're thinking about prepping or survivalism or, honestly, just wanting to feel a bit safer in your own space. We're talking about security fencing.
Ah, yes, security fencing.
It can seem simple, right? Like, just put up a fence and you're good to go.
Yeah, but there's a lot more to it. It's kind of like, if you were building a real fortress.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, you wouldn't just, start stacking stones without a plan.
Exactly. So, where do we start with this whole security fencing plan?
Well, before you even think about fence types or materials or any of that, you got to know your boundaries.
Literally.
Yeah.
Like where your property ends and your neighbor's begins.
Exactly. Property lines. It's the foundation of everything.
So pull out that survey, dust it off, and make sure we know exactly what we're working with.
Yep. And while you're at it, check those setback requirements too.
Setback requirements.
Yeah, those are the rules about how close to the property line you can build.
Oh, right. So we don't want to be encroaching on anyone's space or breaking any local codes.
Exactly. Those can vary a lot depending on where you live, so you definitely got to do your homework. It can be the difference between a smooth process and a legal nightmare.
Legal nightmare. Nobody wants that. So we've got our boundaries figured out. We know how far back we need to build. What's next?
Okay, this is where things get, maybe a little scary for some folks. You got to think about what's going on beneath the surface.
Beneath the surface? You mean like worms and stuff?
Well, worms too, but I'm talking about utilities, buried lines, gas lines, electrical cables, all that fun stuff.
Oh, right. I've heard horror stories about people hitting those while digging.
Yeah, it can be a disaster. Not just expensive, but dangerous too. So before you even think about breaking ground, you got to call 811.
811, that's the call before you dig hotline.
That's the one. They'll come out and mark all the utility lines on your property. It's free, and it could literally save your life.
Okay, that's a no-brainer. 811, check. So we've got our boundaries, called 811. Anything else we need to consider before we start actually, building this fortress?
Ah, good point. Don't forget about your local HOA if you have one.
Oh, yeah, those lovely HOAs.
And the local building department, too.
So we're checking for any rules about fencing and making sure we have all the necessary permits.
Precisely. It's always better to be safe than sorry, especially when it comes to building codes and neighborhood regulations.
Okay, so we've got our boundaries figured out. We've contacted 811. We're good to go with the HOA and permits. Now it's time to actually get down to earth.
Literally. Now you've got to get to know your soil.
The soil. Why is the soil so important?
It's all about the foundation. Different soils have different strengths, different drainage properties.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going with this. So, if you have clay soil, that's going to be different from sandy soil.
Exactly. Clay soil is dense, holds water, can cause drainage problems, even make the fence shift over time.
And sandy soil?
Sandy soil drains well, but it might not provide enough support for your fence posts.
So how do we figure out what kind of soil we're dealing with? Is it just eyeballing it?
Well, you can kind of get a sense of it just by looking, but the best way is a soil testing kit.
Oh, like those things you get at the garden center.
Yep, exactly like that. It'll tell you all you need to know about your soil's composition, its drainage characteristics.
And knowing that helps us how?
It helps you choose the right digging tools, the right size and depth for your post holes, even the type of concrete you use.
Wow, so we're basically becoming soil experts as part of this fortress building journey.
Think of it this way. If you were building a real fortress, you wouldn't just plop it down anywhere, would you? You'd carefully assess the terrain, you'd choose a spot that offered the best natural defenses.
Okay, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And speaking of natural defenses, what about drainage? Is that something we need to think about during our site assessment?
Absolutely. Water is the enemy of any structure, especially a fence. Poor drainage can lead to all sorts of problems. Weakened concrete, leaning posts, even collapse.
So we need to observe how water flows across our property.
Exactly. When it rains, look for areas where water tends to pool or flow towards the fence line.
Okay, so we're looking at the lay of the land, figuring out where the water goes.
Right. This will help you design a drainage system that directs water away from your fence, keeping everything dry and stable.
So it's all connected, right? The soil, the drainage, the location of the fence.
Exactly. Every detail matters when you're building a fortress, even if it's a modern-day one made of steel and concrete.
Well, I'm already feeling like a strategic mastermind, and we haven't even started digging yet.
That's the spirit. All right, so we've assessed our site, we understand our soil and drainage, checked all the local regulations, made sure we're good to go with the HOA. Now for the fun part.
Let's get to the actual fence.
Exactly. And when we're talking serious security, high security steel fencing is the gold standard.
Okay, steel fencing. Why steel, though? Out of all the materials, why steel?
Well, it's incredibly strong, for one. Durable, makes it very difficult to cut through, to climb over. And, compared to something like wood, steel's relatively low maintenance.
Gotcha, so steel's like the workhorse of security fences.
You could say that. And one system that stands out in the world of steel fencing is Ameristar Montage commercial steel fencing.
Ameristar Montage, okay. What makes it so special?
It's really designed with security as the top priority. Like those panels, they're heavy duty, 75 to 90 pounds each. And they have anti-climb features, like narrow spacing between the bars.
Wow, 90 pounds. That's some serious weight.
Yeah, it's not messing around, but let's break down the components a bit.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. What are we actually working with here?
So first, you've got the posts. Those are the backbone of the fence. Usually 2.5 inches square, need to be buried deep, at least 36 inches deep for stability.
Okay, posts, got it.
Then you have the panels themselves. They're 8 feet wide, 6 feet tall, welded steel, maximum strength.
Okay, posts, panels. What am I forgetting?
The hardware. Don't forget all the hardware. Brackets, bolts, post caps, all that good stuff. It holds everything together.
Right, the little things that make the big thing work. So we've got our steel, our posts, our panels, our hardware. Time to start building right.
Hold on. Still some prep work to do before we start putting things up.
Okay, like what?
We need to lay out our fence line. This is critical. Can't just eyeball it.
Oh yeah, I can see how a crooked fence line would kind of defeat the purpose of a security fence.
Exactly. A crooked fence line compromises the whole structure, security, and stability.
So how do we make sure that line is laser straight? What's the secret?
Well, you start by marking the fence line, setting those corner posts first. And this is where a tool called a transit level comes in handy.
Transit level.
Yeah, it's kind of like a surveyor's tool. Helps you establish a perfectly level line over long distances. Make sure all your posts are at the same height. The fence line's perfectly straight.
Sounds fancy. Is it a worthwhile investment, though? Those things can be pricey.
It's like, would you try to build a house without a level? A transit level is crucial for getting a professional-looking fence that's structurally sound. Save you headaches in the long run. And you can rent them too if you don't want to buy one outright.
Okay, rented or bought, transit levels on the list. So we've got our corner posts set. How do we make sure the rest of the posts are lined up perfectly with those corners?
String lines. You run string lines between those corner posts to mark out the entire fence line.
Okay, string lines, got it. Makes sense. Anything else?
Oh, and a little pro tip. Use the 3-4-5 method to make sure your corners are perfectly square.
The 3-4-5 method. That sounds mathematical.
It is. It's a quick geometry trick to ensure those corners are perfect right angles. You measure out 3 feet from the corner along one side of the fence line, 4 feet along the other. The distance between those 2 points should be exactly 5 feet.
Wow, okay. So math meets fortress building. That's cool.
It's all connected. Now, once you've got your layout done, it's time for post hole preparation.
Post holes. So this is where that soil knowledge we were talking about comes in, right?
Absolutely. Knowing your soil type is going to tell you how big those holes need to be, how deep.
Okay, so it's not just digging a hole and plopping in a post.
Not quite. The size of the hole matters. You want a diameter about 3 times wider than the post itself.
3 times wider. Why so big?
It gives the concrete more surface area to grip, creates a stronger, more stable base.
Okay, so it's all about maximizing that contact between the concrete and the soil.
Exactly. And the depth is important too. Usually 1/3 of the post length plus 6 inches. So for a 12-foot post, you're looking at about a 4-foot deep hole.
Wow, that's a lot of digging. Any other tricks to make sure those posts are rock solid?
Couple more. First, you create a bell bottom at the bottom of the hole.
A bell bottom, like for pants.
It's the same idea. You widen the base of the hole slightly. This allows the concrete to move if the ground freezes, prevents it from pushing the post upwards.
Oh, I see. So it's like giving the concrete some wiggle room.
Exactly. And then add a layer of gravel at the bottom of the hole, about 2 inches deep.
Gravel. Okay, so that helps with drainage, creates a more stable surface for the concrete.
You got it. It's all about making sure water doesn't pool around the base of the post and compromise the concrete. Now, with the holes prepped, we can finally set those posts.
All right. Let's get those posts in the ground.
Okay, so now you'll want to use a plumb bob or a level to make sure that post is perfectly vertical.
Plumb, right. Straight up and down. No leaning towers of Pisa here.
Exactly. Make sure it's straight in both directions, not leaning forward or backward, and double check the height against your string line. Make sure it matches the other posts.
Gotcha. So the post is in the hole. It's plumb. It's at the right height. What's next?
Now you're going to temporarily brace the post to keep it from moving while the concrete sets. You can use some wooden sticks and scrap lumber for this.
Okay, bracing it in place. Makes sense.
Then you'll double check the spacing between posts, make sure they're all evenly spaced, and then it's time for the concrete.
The moment of truth. Concrete time. What are the key things here? How do we make sure we mix and pour it right so those posts are set for good?
Consistency is key. You don't want it too runny, you don't want it too thick.
Okay, so Goldilocks in the concrete. Just right.
Exactly. If it's too runny, it won't hold the post securely, too thick, and it might not flow properly into all the crevices, and that weakens it.
I see. So it needs to be strong, but it needs to be able to flow in and around all those gaps. Okay, so we've got the perfect consistency. What next?
Pour it in layers, tamp it down as you go. This gets rid of air bubbles, make sure the concrete settles tightly around that post.
Okay, got it. Pour, tamp, repeat.
Yep. And finally, slope the top away from the post to allow for water drainage.
Slope it away so water doesn't pool around the base. Got it. Okay, concrete's poured. We're done, right? Can we take a break?
Almost. Now comes the hardest part. Waiting. You need to let that concrete cure for at least 24 hours before you even think about attaching the panels.
24 hours. The suspense. Okay, we can handle that. We've laid the groundwork. We've got those posts standing strong, anchored in concrete. Now, for the exciting part, putting up those panels, this is where we really start to see the fortress coming together, right?
It is. It's going to be a satisfying sight. But before we start hanging those heavy panels, some more prep work.
More prep work. All right. What do we need to do before those panels go up?
Well, you want to make sure the surfaces of the posts where the brackets will be attached are clean and smooth. Any debris, any roughness could affect how securely those panels are attached.
Makes sense. A clean connection is a strong connection.
Exactly. Then you're going to mark the locations for the brackets on the posts, pre-drill those holes.
Makes things easier when those heavy panels are involved, right?
Exactly, much easier. And another pro tip here, apply a little bit of anti-seize lubricant to the bolts before you tighten them down.
Anti-seize, huh? What's that for?
Prevents them from seizing up over time. Makes it much easier to adjust them or remove them in the future.
Thinking ahead, planning for the long haul. I like it. Okay, so we've got our posts prepped, holes drilled, lubricant ready. Finally time for those panels.
We're ready. Now remember, those panels are heavy, so definitely a two-person job. You're going to attach the lower brackets to the posts first, then carefully lift that panel into place, position it on the brackets, make sure it's resting securely before you move on to the upper brackets.
Teamwork and careful maneuvering are key here.
You got it. And as you're securing those upper brackets, remember to use those security bolts we talked about. Make sure everything's tightened to the proper torque. Those panels need to be solid.
Solid as a rock. So once that first panel's up, it's basically rinse and repeat, right? Next panel and so on until we've got our wall of steel.
That's the idea. Of course, you'll need to repeat that post-setting process for each section of the fence. But once you've done it a few times, it becomes more routine.
Practice makes perfect, right?
And precision and taking your time, those are key to a strong and secure fence.
It's definitely starting to feel more like building a serious structure than just putting up a fence.
That's what we're doing. We're building a fortress. And what's a fortress without a gate?
Right, the gate. The gateway to our fortress.
Yeah.
What are we looking at here? What kind of gate gives us that maximum security we're after?
For serious security, we're talking a commercial-grade swing gate. Built to handle heavy use, much more secure than a typical residential gate.
Commercial grade, so we're not messing around here.
Not at all. And to operate a heavy-duty gate, we need a heavy-duty opener. We're recommending the LiftMaster LA400 PGU. This thing can handle gates up to 850 pounds.
850 pounds? That's like lifting a small car.
Exactly. And it's not just about brute strength, it's reliable too. Cycle rating of 300 per day, which means it can open and close 300 times a day without breaking a sweat.
Wow. Talk about a workhorse. Okay, we've got our heavy-duty gate. We've got this super-powered opener. What about the frame of the gate itself?
Good point. The gate frame is crucial. It has to support all that weight, the force of the opener, everything.
So what are we building this frame out of?
2-inch square tube steel, Schedule 40 thickness. This type of steel is incredibly strong, incredibly durable.
Okay, so we're building a frame that can handle the stress. Anything else we need to do?
You'll want to include diagonal bracing to prevent the gate from sagging over time.
Diagonal bracing, like extra support beams.
Exactly. And install an anti-sag cable kit with adjustable turnbuckles. This lets you fine-tune the tension on the gate, keep it operating smoothly for years.
So bracing and adjustable cables. Got it. It's amazing how all these little details come together to make a truly strong and secure structure.
That's right. Every detail matters. Now let's talk about how to install this beast. Just like with the fence panels, installing the gate requires careful attention to detail.
Okay, what do we need to watch out for?
First, you've got to pay special attention to the hinge post.
The hinge post. Why is that so important?
Well, it's where the gate swings from, right? So
Right.
it has to be extra strong to handle that constant movement, all that weight.
Right, makes sense. So how do we make sure it's extra strong?
Start with a larger post, at least 4 inches square. Bury it deeper than the other posts. Use more concrete for that base. And then, to really lock it down, you'll want to double brace the post to handle the lateral forces from the gate swinging back and forth.
So we're basically building a mini fortress within our fortress.
You got it. Now let's move on to the gate opener itself.
Okay, the opener. Where does this powerhouse go?
You'll typically mount it on a concrete pad near the hinge post. Make sure that pad is level. Make sure it's sturdy because it's going to be supporting the weight of the opener, all that force it generates. And then you'll need to run conduit for power. Install a weatherproof box to protect the electrical components from the elements.
Conduit, weatherproof box, got it. Anything else to consider?
Yes, lightning protection.
Lightning protection for the gate opener.
Absolutely. You want to install a surge protector, a grounding rod, protect that opener from electrical damage in case of a lightning strike.
Oh yeah, good point. Wouldn't want to be stuck outside my fortress in a thunderstorm because the gate opener got fried.
Exactly. Thinking ahead, anticipating those potential problems.
Okay, so we've got our gate installed, opener mounted, lightning protection in place. What's next?
Now it's time to talk about safety. A security fence is designed to keep people out, but we also want to make sure it doesn't pose a hazard to anyone who might be near it.
Right. Safety should never be an afterthought, especially with a system like this. So what kind of safety features are we talking about?
Our source material really stresses a few key components. First, you've got photo eyes.
Photo eyes, like those things that make automatic doors open.
Exactly. Photo eyes are sensors. Detect when something's in the path of the gate. If that beam gets broken, the gate stops closing.
Prevents anyone from getting trapped or injured. Like an invisible safety net?
Precisely. Essential safety feature. Then we have safety edges.
Safety edges.
Yeah, they're rubber strips mounted along the edges of the gate. If the gate hits something while closing, those safety edges activate a switch. Stops the gate, reverses it.
So like bumpers?
Exactly. Especially important for protecting vehicles, anyone who might be near the gate as it's closing. And of course, you'll want clear warning signs, reflective tape, let people know it's an automatic gate.
Right, so they know to be cautious. Any other safety features?
You might consider installing loop detectors.
Loop detector.
Yeah, they're sensors buried under the driveway. Detect the presence of metal, so when a car drives over them, it sends a signal to the gate opener to open automatically.
Oh, cool. So like invisible tripwires that open the gate for you.
You got it. They're super convenient.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so we've covered the physical safety features. Now what about access control? How do we make sure only the people we want can get through that fortress gate?
Access control systems. They let you control who comes in and out using different methods. Keypads, card readers, even biometric scanners.
So it's like a digital bouncer for our fortress.
Exactly. A basic system usually includes a keypad for entering codes, a card reader for access cards, a controller to manage all the signals, and of course, a power supply.
Right, because it needs juice to work. Anything else we need to think about for our access control system?
You want a reliable power supply. Make sure you have a backup battery in case of a power outage. Wouldn't want to be locked out of your own fortress, right?
Yeah, definitely not. Anything else we need to know about setting up these systems?
A few key things. Install everything in a weatherproof enclosure. Protect it from the elements. Second, surge protection. Prevents damage from those power surges. And third, you might want to consider adding an internet connection and a cellular backup.
Internet connection and cellular backup. Okay, why those?
The internet connection lets you monitor and control the system remotely, from your phone, your computer. And the cellular backup, that keeps things running even if your internet goes down.
Wow, so we can be like controlling our gate from across the world.
Pretty much. So we've got the gate, the opener, the safety features, and the access control. What else could we possibly need to make this fortress even more secure?
Yeah, is there anything else?
Well, we can always make it tougher for intruders to get in, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk anti-climb measures.
Anti-climb measures. Now we're talking. What do you suggest? Barbed wire.
Barbed wire is an option, but honestly, it can be dangerous and it's not always the best look.
Right, not very welcoming.
There are other options that are more effective and more aesthetically pleasing.
Okay, like what?
One option is roll guards.
Roll guards, what are those?
They're horizontal bars mounted along the top of the fence. They spin freely when someone tries to grab them, makes it really hard to climb over.
Clever, like trying to climb a ladder that's constantly spinning. What else is there?
Another option is security mesh. It's a heavy-duty wire mesh attached to the existing fence. Creates a physical barrier that's tough to cut through, tough to climb.
So it's like adding another layer of armor to the fence.
Exactly. It's a great way to enhance security without replacing the entire fence.
Okay, so we've got the fence, the gate, anti-climb measures. Anything else we can do to make this fortress truly impenetrable?
Well, there's one more area that often gets overlooked. Ground security.
Ground security? What do you mean by that?
Lots of people focus on the height of the fence, the strength, forgetting about what's happening below ground.
You mean like someone digging under the fence?
Exactly. A determined intruder could tunnel under. But we can prevent that.
Okay, how do we stop them from becoming moles and tunneling their way in?
One common method is installing a security sill.
Security sill, what's that?
It's basically a concrete curb that runs along the base of the fence, acts as a physical barrier, makes digging a lot harder.
So it's like an underground extension of the fence.
Exactly. You dig a trench along the fence line, reinforce it with rebar, and then pour concrete into that trench.
Okay, it's like a mini foundation for our fence. So concrete? What if we don't want to deal with concrete?
Well, there are other options. You can use steel sill plates.
Steel sill plates.
Yeah, they're prefabricated steel plates buried along the fence line, usually about 1/4 inch thick, 8 inches wide, galvanized finish to prevent rust.
So it's like the metal version of the concrete sill. Which one's better?
Really depends on your needs, your preferences. Concrete's more labor-intensive but can be more effective. Steel's easier to install but might not be as durable in the long run.
Got it. So a couple of different ways to tackle that underground vulnerability.
Yeah.
Are there any other methods for preventing digging besides the sills and the plates?
You can create a gravel trench filled with sharp rocks beneath the fence line. It's a deterrent, not foolproof. And another option is a buried mesh skirt.
Buried mesh skirt. What's that?
It's a layer of heavy-duty wire mesh buried underground along the fence line, like an underground net to catch any would-be diggers.
That's actually pretty clever. Effective.
Very effective, but it can be more labor-intensive to install than the other options.
Okay, so we've talked about all these different parts of our security fence system. I'm starting to think we've built something truly impenetrable. What could possibly go wrong now?
Well, even the strongest fortress needs regular upkeep to stay in top shape.
Oh, right. Maintenance. That makes sense.
Think of it like taking care of your car, you know? Regular maintenance keeps it running smoothly, prevents costly repairs down the line. For your fence, that means monthly, quarterly, and annual tasks.
Okay, break it down for me. What do we need to do every month?
Monthly checks are pretty simple. Mainly, you're looking for anything that seems out of place or not working properly. You'll want to test the gate operation, make sure everything's moving smoothly, listen for any unusual noises, any grinding sounds.
So it's like a listening check, making sure everything sounds healthy.
Exactly. Then lubricate those hinges.
A little squirt of WD-40.
Exactly. Then check all those fasteners. Bolts, screws, make sure they're tight. And finally, test your access control system, make sure everything's functioning the way it should.
Okay, so the monthly checks are all about making sure everything's moving and functioning correctly. What about quarterly?
Quarterly service involves a bit more hands-on work. You'll start by cleaning those photo eyes.
The photo eyes, right?
Yeah. Dirt and debris can build up over time and interfere with the operation. A quick wipe down keeps those sensors functioning properly. Then you'll check and adjust the gate travel limits, make sure the gate is opening and closing fully without hitting anything.
So it's like fine-tuning the gate's swing.
You got it. Then inspect the concrete bases around the posts. Look for any cracks, signs of erosion. If you spot any damage, you'll need to repair it to maintain the stability of those posts.
Keeping those foundations strong.
Exactly. And finally, test all the safety devices. The photo eyes, the safety edges, make sure they're doing their job.
Okay, so it's all about being proactive, preventing those little issues from becoming big problems.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the annual inspection is the most comprehensive check of them all.
You're right. The annual inspection is like giving your entire fence system a thorough physical exam.
Okay, what's involved in this yearly checkup?
It starts with a complete hardware check. Every nut, bolt, bracket, hinge, make sure everything is tight, in good condition.
So we're getting up close and personal with every piece of hardware.
Exactly. Replace any worn or damaged parts and touch up any paint that's chipped or faded. Protect the metal from rust and corrosion.
Right, a little preventative maintenance goes a long way.
It really does. Next, you'll service the gate operator. Lubricate the moving parts, check the battery, make sure the electronics are functioning correctly.
Like giving the gate opener a tune-up.
Exactly. And if you have a battery backup system, you'll want to replace that battery annually too, make sure it's ready to kick in if needed. And finally, it's always a good idea to have a professional come out and give the whole system a once-over.
Oh yeah, good idea. A second set of eyes, especially an expert's eyes, can't hurt.
Exactly. They can spot potential issues you might miss, recommend any necessary repairs or upgrades.
Okay, so we've talked about how to build our fortress, how to maintain it, what happens if something goes wrong.
Troubleshooting. That's where a little knowledge comes in handy.
Luckily, our source material seems to have us covered there too. They've got a pretty comprehensive troubleshooting guide for common issues.
They do. It's a great resource.
Let's dive into it. What are some of the most common problems people have with their gates?
One of the most common, gate won't close properly. Super frustrating.
I bet. It's like a front door that won't latch.
Exactly. So if your gate's being stubborn, first thing to check is that photo eye alignment. Make sure those sensors are aligned properly. Nothing's blocking the beam.
So those safety beams need a clear path. What else?
If you have a loop detector, check that too. Make sure it's detecting vehicles, sending the right signal.
Check that invisible tripwire. Got it.
Then inspect the track and rollers. Make sure they're clean, well lubricated, no obstructions. Test those safety edges. Make sure they're activating the switch when pressed. And finally, check the operator force setting. This determines how much force the opener uses to open and close the gate.
Operator force setting. So if that's set too low, the gate might not have enough power to close.
Exactly. It's a balancing act.
What if the gate is closing, but it's not smooth? It's binding, sticking.
Another common problem. If the gate is binding, first thing, lubricate those hinges.
Keep them slippery. What else?
Check that post alignment. If those posts are leaning out of plumb, it can cause the gate to bind. You might need to adjust them, tighten some bolts.
Right. Make sure those anchors are strong and in the right position.
And then make sure the gate is operating on a level surface. If the ground's uneven, it can cause the gate to bind.
So it's all about making sure the gate has a smooth path to travel, that everything's aligned.
Exactly. If the ground's uneven, you might need to regrade the area or adjust the gate hardware to compensate. Then, if your gate has springs, you'll want to adjust the spring tension.
Springs?
Yeah, the springs help balance the weight of the gate, make it easier to open and close.
Oh, okay. So fine-tuning those springs is important.
If the tension's too high or too low, it can cause binding. And lastly, inspect the wheels and track. Make sure the wheels are rolling freely, the track is clean.
Okay, so a lot of it comes down to making sure the gate has a smooth, clear path, and all the moving parts are working together properly. Now, what about the access control system? What kind of issues might we run into there?
One of the most common is intermittent operation. The system works sometimes, but not others.
Oh, that would drive me crazy. Like playing a guessing game with your own gate. What do we do if that's happening?
First things first, check that power supply, make sure it's plugged in, outlets working.
Back to basics.
You can use a voltage tester to double check. Then test the backup battery. Make sure it's charged and connected properly. Verify all the wiring connections.
So we're making sure all those electrons are flowing where they're supposed to be flowing.
Exactly. Look for any loose wires, frayed wires. Even a small connection issue can cause intermittent operation. And then check for interference, other electronic devices like wireless routers, cordless phones, things like that.
Oh, interesting. So those could interfere with the access control system.
They can. Try moving those devices away or changing their channels.
Good to know. So it's like debugging a computer network.
It is, sort of. And finally, check for firmware updates. Just like computers and phones, these systems have software that controls their operation. Manufacturers release updates to fix bugs, improve performance, keep your system up to date.
So just like updating our phones and computers, we need to update our security system too.
Exactly. Now, we've talked a lot about the fence itself, but let's not forget about another crucial layer of security: cameras.
Oh yeah, cameras. Cameras are great, but there are so many different types, and it can be overwhelming figuring out where to put them.
Placement is key. You're absolutely right. You want to position your camera strategically, get the best coverage, minimize those blind spots.
So it's not just a matter of slapping a camera up anywhere.
Not at all. There's a real art to it. Start with your entry and exit points: doors, gates, garages. Position cameras above them to capture anyone coming or going.
Okay, so guard those entrances.
Then, install cameras at each corner of your property. Get that full perimeter coverage.
Surround the entire perimeter. Got it.
To really eliminate blind spots, you can use overlapping camera angles. And don't forget about height. Install them at least 10 to 12 feet high. Deter tampering and ensure you get clear footage.
Okay, high enough to deter mischief, but low enough for good images. Makes sense. Now, what about the different types of cameras? Dome cameras, bullet cameras, PTZ cameras. What's the difference? When do we use which?
Well, each has its strengths. Dome cameras, they're great for wide area coverage. Discrete design blends in.
So they're good for, like, general surveillance of open spaces.
Exactly. Then you've got bullet cameras.
Bullet cameras, those are the ones that kind of look like, well, bullets, right?
Yep. Those are perfect for long-range viewing, like long driveways, property perimeters. Their shape makes them weather-resistant.
So those are outdoor warriors. What about the PTZ cameras? Those seem pretty high-tech.
PTZ stands for pan-tilt-zoom. Means you can control the camera's movement and zoom remotely. Some of them can even track moving targets automatically.
Wow, so they're like having your own.
They are. They're often used for high-security applications where you need to closely monitor specific areas.
Okay, so they're like our high-powered security guards, always on the lookout.
Yeah.
Now, when we're installing these cameras, are there any special considerations, like for weatherproofing or wiring?
Absolutely. You want to use weatherproof mounts, cable conduits, protect those wires, make sure your cameras can survive the elements.
Protect those connections.
And you can also integrate your cameras with motion detection systems.
Oh, so the cameras only record when they detect movement.
Exactly. Saves you from sifting through hours of footage.
Smart. Okay, what about storing all that footage?
You'll want to connect your cameras to a DVR or NVR system for continuous recording and playback. That way, you can store footage for later review if you need it.
Right, so if something happens, we have a record of it.
Exactly, like a security camera archive for your fortress.
I like it. Okay, so we've got our fortress built, cameras in place. We're feeling pretty secure. Anything else we should consider before we wrap things up?
One more area that deserves attention: entry point hardening.
Entry point hardening. What do you mean?
Even with a high security fence, a sophisticated access control system, you want to make those entry points as secure as possible.
Oh, right, because they're often the weakest link in any security system.
Exactly. Let's start with the gate. We've talked about this earlier, but it's worth repeating. Strong frame, heavy-duty steel, those diagonal braces, that anti-sag cable kit to keep it aligned, prevent sagging, and use heavy-duty hinges, a commercial-grade locking mechanism.
So it's all about reinforcing those potential weak points.
Yeah.
What about access doors?
For access doors, reinforce those door frames with steel or aluminum.
Make them tough to break through.
Exactly. You can also install security bars, grills on those ground-level doors and windows. Use high-security deadbolts on all access doors.
So it's like layering security measures, making it as difficult as possible for someone to get in.
Exactly. You might also consider upgrading to more advanced entry control systems. We talked about those basic systems with keypads, card readers, but there are even more secure options.
Oh, like what?
Biometric scanners. They use fingerprint recognition, facial recognition, things like that.
Wow, that's next level security. It's like something you'd see in a spy movie.
It is, and they're very difficult to fool. Another option is using smart card readers.
Smart cards, okay.
They use more advanced technology that's harder to duplicate, harder to hack. The level of security you choose really depends on your needs, your budget, and how much risk you're comfortable with.
Got it. So we've got those gates and doors reinforced. Anything else we can do to harden those entry points?
One more essential element: security lighting.
Lighting, of course. It's like making your fortress visible, less appealing to those who'd rather operate in the shadows.
Exactly. And there are strategic ways to use lighting for maximum security.
Okay, enlighten me. What are the key things to know about security lighting?
First, let's talk types of lights. Motion sensor lights, they're great for deterring intruders. Automatically turn on when they detect movement.
So it's like having a surprise spotlight that activates when someone gets too close.
Exactly. And they're energy efficient too, because they're only on when they need to be.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
What are other types of lights are there?
LED floodlights. They provide that bright, wide coverage. Very energy efficient, very long lasting. Good investment.
Okay, so if you need to light up a large area, LED floodlights are the way to go. What about solar-powered lights? Those seem pretty convenient.
They are convenient, especially for areas where you don't have easy access to wiring. Powered by the sun, so no wiring, no electricity needed.
Right, so perfect for those off-grid situations.
They are, but you have to remember they might not be as bright as traditional lights, and cloudy weather can affect their performance.
Got it. So it's a trade-off between convenience and power. Now, where do we strategically place these lights for maximum security?
You want to illuminate those vulnerable areas, eliminate those shadows where someone could hide. Start with all your entry points: doors, gates, garages.
Okay, light up those entrances.
Then lights around the perimeter of your property, especially along fence lines, areas with lots of trees or bushes.
So create a ring of light around the property.
And any blind spots you identified during that initial site assessment, use shielded fixtures too.
Shielded fixtures.
Yeah, they direct the light where it's needed most. Reduces light pollution, keeps the light from shining into your neighbor's windows.
Right, being a good neighbor while also securing our fortress. So it's not just about flooding the property with light, it's about using it strategically.
Exactly. It's about using light intelligently. Enhance security, deter potential intruders.
Wow, we've covered a lot today. Site assessment, soil analysis, fence installation, gate automation, access control, cameras, lighting. It's mind-boggling how much goes into building a truly secure property.
It's a multi-layered approach, for sure. But remember, the most important layer is knowledge.
That's so true. And speaking of knowledge, our source material included a section on frequently asked questions, which I think is a great way to wrap things up.
Yeah, let's hit a few of those.
Okay, first question, and I think we already know the answer to this one. What is the best type of fence for maximum security?
High security steel fencing. Like that Ameristar montage system we talked about. It's strong, it's durable, it's got those anti-climb features.
Right, steel is the way to go if you're serious about security. Next question. How deep should those fence posts be set for optimal stability?
We covered this earlier, but it's a good reminder. At least 1/3 of the post length underground, plus an additional 6 inches. So for those 12-foot posts, that's 4 feet deep.
Deep posts for a strong foundation. All right, what else do people want to know?
Do I need a permit to install a security fence?
Permits. The paperwork of fortress building.
Important question. Always check with your local building department. Most places require permits for fences over a certain height or fences with specific security features. Don't skip this step.
All right, do your homework before you start digging. What's next?
How can I prevent gate sagging over time? A very common problem, and luckily one that's pretty easy to prevent.
Right, gate sag is no fun. So how do we keep our gates from drooping?
Those diagonal braces, the anti-sag cable kit, those are key for keeping that gate aligned, preventing sagging. Regular maintenance helps too.
Okay, reinforce and adjust. Last question.
What regular maintenance is necessary for a security fence?
Maintenance, the key to keeping everything running smoothly.
It is. Monthly checks, that quarterly service, the annual deep dive to inspect every part of the system.
Well, I think that about covers it. From planning and site assessment to installation, maintenance, even troubleshooting, we've really explored every nook and cranny of security fencing.
We have. It's been a thorough deep dive.
And a lot of work, I'm not going to lie.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the peace of mind that comes with knowing your property is truly secure is priceless.
Couldn't agree more. It's an investment worth making.
Before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. We've covered the basics, but every property is unique. What other creative security measures could you envision incorporating into your own system? What unique challenges, what unique opportunities does your property present?
That's a great question to ponder. There's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to security. It's about adapting these principles and techniques to your own specific situation.
Exactly. Use this knowledge as a foundation and then build from there. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of security fencing.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you feel empowered to take the next steps in your own security journey.
Remember, knowledge is power.
And you now have the power to create a safer and more secure environment for yourself, for your loved ones, and for everything you hold dear. Until next time, Deep Divers, stay safe out there.